Hello. I feel so restless right now, so here I am. I'm gonna do something. First, I'm gonna start by lighting this candle. I don't know, what am I gonna talk about? I think it's something like, this. Love, 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 love. I wish I could have sang that better. Um, it's like, so you may have heard me talk about how I got on this spiritual journey years ago. It began for me because I had like a breakdown, like a mental breakdown where I could not deal with life. I lost everything. Well, I lost everything and then I couldn't deal with life. Right? Like, I'm talking about kids, car, boyfriend, home, all at once. Yeah, first Saturn return slapped me hard. So, this is kind of what my initiation was into a spiritual journey. And that pushed me into the Hanged Man, you know, and it was like another perspective was the only thing that I could take from there, right? Because the perspectives that I had been holding up to that point got me in the position of like, I can't do this. Now, when I say I can't do this, I'm just talking about regular life things that a lot of people do just fine. Working, taking care of kids, paying their bills, dealing with car troubles when they come, and relationships. And that was all a bit much for me. And I know that, like, to the average person, they might think like, well, what a loser. Like, you couldn't, what do you mean? If you have kids, you gotta keep it together. It's like, yeah, I would have thought that too. But, you know, I had endured a lot of trauma in my upbringing, and I had carried all that with me. I had no tools, and my coping mechanisms were just frail. And it was the best thing that could have ever happened, I think, because if I had good coping mechanisms, I wouldn't have failed so big, and then I wouldn't have started changing my life. You see, it was a beautiful thing when my everything crumbled for me, because then I had to deal with the stuff that I wasn't dealing with. Why wasn't I dealing with it? Because no one in my surroundings, like the people that taught me how to be and how to live and how to be a person, like no one else was dealing with their shit either. And, we're all individual souls, so what we can endure varies, right? And it just so happens that, like, I couldn't keep up. But in a bigger picture view, all it means is, like, my soul had a certain agenda for my incarnation. So I piled on a bunch of stuff that would be certain to break me down so that I could start getting the truth, you know? So that's what happened. It was all my misunderstandings, right? And am I saying then that a lot of people are just living life with misunderstandings and coping just fine with them? Yeah. Yeah, that's my perception. That's my perception. But as you've heard me say, I don't think it's wrong. Like, even the experiences I had during the times where I was traumatized or had poor coping mechanisms, or misunderstandings about life, those were valuable pieces of information for me to have about life. Those experiences lent to me finding the truth, right? Sometimes we learn through the contrast. And, some of the behaviors that I had, as a result of the thoughts and feelings that I was having, were kind of lower density things. Like, I indulged in addictive things and drugs and alcohol and vengeful thoughts, in I never stole or anything like that, except one time when I was a child, I switched a price on an item so that my mother would buy it for me. Yeah, that was bad. I know that, you know? But, like, I'm just saying, like, it wasn't in my nature to be like that. Like, I did have this, like, moral compass, but it didn't keep me from doing some of the things that I would never do today. So anyway, coping mechanisms, mental breakdown, all crumbles. I crumble. I fall not just to my knees, but basically like to my chin. And and then I have to, figure out, like, well, first of all, I wanted to die. So it took me a while before I started to try to figure things out, because, like, I just wanted to die. And given the conclusions that I had made about life up to that point, I didn't see the point, right? Because I was in suffering. I was in emotional suffering. All of the unprocessed trauma was pain, and it was still in my emotional body, and it was weighing me down. And I didn't have the framework or the understanding or the bigger picture view, right? Because, like, my mind was so closed in with trauma. It was all filtering my view, and it was like this overwhelmed child version of me was my operating system. And this overwhelmed child version of me was just, like, incapable. It was just like, I don't know, I just want to avoid this pain, and can someone please love me? And it's too bad, right? Like, it's too bad when you look at it in terms of, like, I actually, had children that I was responsible for. And so it was inevitable to pass some of those traumas along to my children, which you know, is, I think, the most unfortunate part of the whole thing. But then again, I do have to look at it from the bigger picture view and know that, like, these children came in to be my children. Like, these souls knew that they would be my children. And so they, on a soul level at least, did know that they were signing up for this. And there are reasons for that as well, because they are going to pursue certain things, certain, like, branches of this these sort of experiences that I'm not pursuing, right? But the whole reason that I'm talking about this, right, I'm just, like, laying a quick foundation to say that, like, okay, I tried to live how everyone was living. I couldn't do it. Things crumbled for me. Then I had to start eventually building myself back up. And I started being, like, led on this spiritual journey. And when I say led, it was like I would just be given information. And it was like one thing led to another, and the knowledge was stuff that I decided to experiment with. And it just gave me, like, something to do, because, like I said before, the perspectives that I had been in, the coping mechanisms that I had adopted, failed and didn't leave me any room for, like, thriving or living. I didn't even want to live with those perspectives and the experiences that I had had that far in life. And like, the idea of living a life that wasn't in my view either at that time, So these things that I started learning put hope in my view and gave me a reason to try. And that was beautiful. But one of the things I came to along this journey for me, and what I really have come to realize, is, like, it was more like, yes, knowledge was being fed to me by this and that, like curiosities, by people that would say things to me, by repetitive themes, symbols, and concepts that would come in to get my attention and make me curious enough to look into them further. One of the, what I would say about these things is they were remembrances for my soul. So, like, my soul, yes, had to drop into humanness and forget and be veiled, but my soul did know a lot of this stuff already, these concepts of, like, just the laws of the universe, and, that's basically it. The laws of the universe and how energy works on this earth. And so as I was, like, experimenting with it, I was proving it to my conscious self, to my ego. And eventually I got my ego on board with this whole idea of, like, oh, There's definitely a way out. Yeah, it's going to take some work, but why not fucking do the work? So started to do the work and used those pieces of information, these spiritual understandings, teachings, topics, just like laws of the universe and tips, tricks of the trade, and information that I was brought to from here and there to bring myself back into, this kind of version of myself that's more pure. And when I say more pure, I mean more pure to who I really am, to my soul, right? And meaning I don't have to cope with life. I'm just going to experience life now. Before it was coping because there was a part of my ego that wanted to save me from having to experience certain things that I didn't feel equipped to process. But now, because I've processed them by doing the work, I am equipped to process them and I'm equipped to experience them. So I can just be present and have experiences in life, right? So I've caught up. I caught up. All the backlog that I hadn't yet processed yet that actually held me, that crumbled me under the weight of it, right? But I want to, the whole point of this, all of this preface that I've been talking about is this. The whole thing that I want to say about what I'm trying to say is that love is the thing that solves it all. Love is the thing that it is. Love is all there is. We are love. Love, love, love. Love solves it. It's always love. Like, love is the answer. Love one. Love, we are love. One love. It's always love. So a few times recently, I have been faced with, because I sometimes will watch YouTube channels of people who do readings, sometimes relationship readings, sometimes just collective readings. And one of the themes I've seen is them talking about how, they are all for the unity, right? Unity. Me too, right? Unity. I believe in this thing that we're doing here on Earth. I believe that humanity is like my family, right? I'm rooting for us all, and I don't want to do harm here on Earth to humans, plants, animals, Earth, or objects, insects, birds, reptile, nothing, all of God's creatures are pretty good to me, as far as I'm concerned. I believe in unity as well. I do know that in nature there is this system of predators and all that. And so, I'm just going to step away from that for a moment and just talk about us in terms of humans, right? So I've been coming across these readers that will talk about unity. And then there's this one reader that was talking about unity, but by the end of the talk there was this sort of like this us and them declaration, as far as the people who had caused harm to a certain segment of the population that she was reading for. So these were people who maybe just weren't very nice in relationship, right? She was reading for a segment of the population that had been in relationship with people who were abusive. And when I say abusive, they maybe cheated or strung people along, breadcrumbed them, weren't honest, didn't prioritize them, manipulated them, all kinds of things like that. All of the unfair relating stuff that I talk about so much, and that I talk about healing from, that I talk about how we need to upgrade ourselves so that we're not relating in those ways anymore, right? Because I recognize the harm in it, right? Because I recognize that a lot of my trauma had to do with those relating dynamics in my childhood. Okay. So here's the thing, like, I've been watching this group of people do this kind of healing by uncovering the truths of the relationships that they've been in. And I could relate because I've been in those kind of relationships too, right? And I like seeing other people's perspectives. I want to see if there's people that are going about healing in some other way than what I've discovered. And like, are they actually doing the work, and are they on board? And sometimes I get surprised because I'll think, oh, this is a spiritual community. Oh, they talk about shadow work. Oh, they must know what they're doing. And then like when it comes down to it, it's like, oh, they've still been talking about this and it's months later and they haven't solved it. Shit. But I solved it the night that we discovered it together. And so I'm laughing just because it was uncomfortable for me, because it's like whenever I think I have found a community that can vibe with me, I find I outgrow it very shortly after, and it's been a little bit disheartening, but also like, I guess I'm talking about it because of that, right? Because it's like a little bit like, huh. But it's also been like, I haven't taken it like, oh, poor me. I've been taking it like, oh, this is just like a challenge that universe has for me to like accept it even here in this community. That sometimes I'll be able to see someone's shadow. They won't be ready to heal it yet. And that's just where they're going to stay for a while. And I have nothing to do about it, right? Like this part of me, wants to say, oh, well, if it's a spiritual community, I should be able to like share this knowledge with them, and then they can move through it and catch up. Because ideally, I would think that when you're in this like spiritual community, that you're kind of doing this like tandem thing where, like, say you're in a conscious relationship. I think the beauty of it would be that it's like a constant growth where one person like may be the one who's teaching the other or reflecting with the other. And then that brings that person up higher. And then they can reflect back to you, and then you come higher. And then you can reflect back to them and they come higher. So you kind of just lift each other up perpetually. I gotta take a sip of this. So when that stops happening, when that can't happen, I don't know, there's part of me that's sad, right? It's just then I got to go through this process. But I've been challenging myself to not just cut and run. I've been challenging myself to just be in that position of observer, and realizing that like maybe God is trying to show me, or maybe universe is trying to show me something else, that I haven't realized because I didn't have the experience of it. Maybe by observing this group go through this in a different way, that I'll discover something else, like possibly, we'll see, right? But essentially where they've appeared to be, stagnant, is at this place where they're just full of shame or blame instead of acceptance, for the other. It's like sometimes when I hear one of these readers talk about the other party, the party that was so-called the bad one, right? Just so much disgust for the other party that it's so apparent that the reader is not healed on some of their own wounding, because whenever we're healed, it's replaced with compassion. Oh, so do I need to be healed do I need to heal something around being disappointed when I outgrow people? Yeah, I need to have compassion for myself and them. All right, I'll work on that. But let me go back to my point for now. So when reader's talking about the other, being so awful and this is what they do and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, the reader is not taking into consideration that that's a human. And there are reasons that they've acted this way. There are reasons, even someone who acts narcissistically is doing that for a reason. And when we're fully healed, we replace any of that blaming, shaming, or feeling victimized with compassion for ourselves and the other. So at the same time, this reader is talking about feeling spiritually attacked. And I believe that what's really happening, and I couldn't have seen this while I was in it myself, I think I too would have perceived spiritual attacks until the time when I fully healed. Because once I fully healed and had compassion for the others, anyone who had been an abusive role towards me, then I was no longer feeling those kind of lower density energies. I believe the non-forgiveness is the darkness that is being felt. And it's because this grudge is being held onto. So I feel like it's worth mentioning that it's really important to figure out what happened, and resolve these karmas. But resolving the karma has to do with doing all the steps and not stopping on the victim, I'm a victim step. That's just a step along the road. So it may be important to let yourself process and be present with feelings of being victimized, but that's just a step on the whole staircase. So you're not through it yet, and you haven't healed it yet. So, it's possible that some people are not meant to heal it fully yet, and so it's valid, right? And we know that now that the only reason I'm really talking about this is because I have work to do in healing my disappointment and sadness over outgrowing groups of people and certain people. I don't like it. I don't want to do it, But when I pull a card on it, I'll get a card something like forge, don't follow. It's oh, yeah. So the universe tells me, it's not about being around like-minded people for me. It's about me forging, my own path. I'm not following someone else. So, if I put it in perspective like that. So there's just this thing that I have to process about, not being happy about having to even leave spiritually minded groups. And people. Well, now that I've realized it's my own shadow, I don't know if I should even post this. It's sure, I will. I'm not human. I still have shadows. But that's where I'm at. And love really is the answer. So there was this, I came across a mythology about Zeus having cursed Aphrodite to only have access to love as her weapon in any battle she faced. And I have Aphrodite prominent in my chart near my North Node. So I was oh, yeah, this makes sense to me because that's what I do. Love, and I wouldn't even call it a weapon, but love is my solution for all the things. Whether it's self-love, it's usually always just self-love. Love myself through the thing. Now I'm the person who can handle the thing because I have loved myself even when the thing is happening. All right, so let me just work through this while I have you, because once I put my focus on something and address it, I can work through it very quickly. So what did I uncover there? It was I'm acknowledging my disappointment and sadness, having Part of me wants to say a bigger awareness, and the other part of me wants to say just outgrown. I don't know if either one of those really sounds humble enough. Grown apart from, I'll say. My sadness and disappointment having grown apart from spiritually minded groups and people. Some spiritually minded groups and people. All right, so validate why. Why do I feel this? I feel this because it's like if I'm in a spiritual relationship, like I'm talking to somebody who's spiritually minded, or if I'm in a group of people who are spiritually minded, they do the work, they know the concepts, they understand what's going on. And like, I started having expectations of them that they would be doing the work. See? That's where the upset was from, because I had an expectation. All right, so I'm still falling into expectations of people. All right. That's a branch. I'm going to put a little pin in it right here, and we'll come back to that one. Okay, so because I was having expectations of people, it makes sense then. It's a valid thing that I would get disappointed, because I had no business having expectations of people. They're just people, and they're all going to have different experiences. And I don't get to dictate what those are or what the timing is of their progress. So let me accept that this is what it is for me. I have a situation where I may have grown apart from certain people that I didn't want to grow apart from. Does that feel? Let me be present with those feelings. Sad, disappointed, like frustrated, like alone again. I'm alone again. You know that old Dawkins song that just came to my mind? I'm just letting the feelings be with me. If I need a lot more time, I'll stop the video and but I don't know. Let's see. The reason I close my eyes is just so I can like give my full presence to the feeling without the distraction of like what's in my surroundings. Yeah, I already feel it dissipating. Like there's so much relief right now. Just like allowed to be with the feeling of being sad and disappointed and frustrated. So if you're wondering like why am I just watching her do this meditation, it's like, well, maybe you can identify a wound in you and do it along with me, like rewind, do the process, because it may be helpful for you to process while I'm processing, process your own, whatever yours is, I'm not saying that you'd have the same one. But if you can acknowledge something that you would need to neutralize, then you could do it. I could just feel the energy moving like through. It kind of gives me this little like cold feeling as it's leaving. I can't feel all of them viscerally, but this one I can. It's like a lot in my head. Interesting. Okay. Now, let's look at the fact that I was still having expectations of people, even though my standard is, I've raised my standard to say that I don't want to have expectations of people. So let me acknowledge this. Even though I have the standard to not have expectations of people, I've still discovered that I have expectations of people. Let's validate this. I think it's because, like, even though a lot of things have been showing me and telling me that, like, I'm a forerunner, right? Like, I'm a path, a trailblazer, I guess you would say, right? Like, I'm be doing my own thing. There's like this child part of me that's like, oh yeah, she's got pain. She's um, like so sad about it's it's flashing me back to my siblings and like just how much I actually do miss my siblings. Um, from childhood, my siblings and I. So I'm the oldest of five, but three of us were much closer in age. They were from my mother's first marriage. We were from my mother's first marriage, and so um, since there was three of us, a lot of times it would be kind of like two against one. Usually, I was the one that was alone. Usually, um, so it's valid because I think I think the little girl in me just wants to play with someone. It just wants to play with someone. Yeah, yeah, and the little girl in me expects to have what she wants: a playmate, playmates. It's like this part of me is at odds with what my soul's intention is. What came right then was like this realization of like it's not always going to be that I'm going to be alone. It's just like that this right now, this is what it is. I'm doing this part alone. I don't think I'll always have to be alone. So, all right. So, yeah, it was valid for this little girl, this little child part of me to expect to have someone to play with because, to her, that's what life's about. So, why wouldn't she be allowed to? Oh, she's so sad. So, I accept that this is truth for me. This is part of me. And I am willing to be present with the feelings, which is longing, sadness and longing. It's for like true friendship, true friendship, like not backstabby people, not you have to walk on eggshells for? People that are going to turn against you the next week. Even like with my siblings, even if one of them turned against me, so it would be like two against me, I would still forgive whatever one it was and let them back in to hang out with me if they ever wanted to leave the other one, you know? But mostly it was two against one. I don't think three of us played together very often at all. But that was another thing by another reader I was watching. It was like this reading was talking about how someone was gonna come back after they had wronged this person, and like the reader was kind of saying, well, it's too late now. And I was thinking like, oh, that's such a petty attitude, because, and I think part of it is the teaching of the twin flame teachings. You know, it's part of the spiritual knowledge that I came to, and it served me very well to understand that a true clearing of the energy lets the other person show up in a different way. I've seen it with so many people in my life. When I clear a certain energy between us, they show up in a different way. So it's very limiting and small-minded to say that like someone who's wronged us in the past never gets another chance. It's like, I've messed up myself. I've done dumb shit. And imagine if I, did something dumb in the relationship or the soul contract or whatever the other person's role in my life was so important. And it could never be realized just because I fumbled. It's like trial and error is a valid way to go through life. And like when you're asleep, before everything crumbled for me and I was just trying to survive, like all those lower natured things that I partook in, I didn't know any other choice. There was no like conscious decision made. It was just like, oh, I got to do this, So to me, it seems so weird to proclaim something like unity and love, and then to hold grudges like that. I don't believe in holding the grudges, right? So, and I think that must correlate to me not holding grudges against myself, right? Like you just saw me uncover in myself that even though I talk and talk and talk about not having expectations of other people, that I uncovered in myself a place where I had expectations of other people. And like, guess what? I'm okay with me, even though that happened. It's like, I'm a very, and when I say I am, I mean all of us are, very like intricately woven, human with a lot of different influences and biases and limitations and also potential and inspirations. So I'm not gonna be perfect. And like I need to be faced with challenges continuously. Maybe not as much as I used to be, but it's nice when one comes along, right? That feeling when I'm sitting with the emotion right there, when I was like closing my eyes and I said, oh, it felt like something cold coming through down my mind, my brain. I love that feeling. I love the feeling of an energy leaving my body or like neutralizing in my body, I guess. It's like magic. So I guess because I don't hold grudges against myself, I also say that it would be silly to hold grudges against others. Now, am I going to be a doormat and like let someone repeatedly mistreat me, and not learn that they're never, planning to change? Well, I wouldn't say never, but I definitely will take space and not allow people to trample me or use me like a doormat. Like I get that. And that's a matter of discernment, you know? I have to make those decisions sometimes. And I don't know, that's the way I like to do it. Like, it's not black and white. It's just not a black and white thing. It's like, all right, well, so much time has passed and this person, is bound to have grown. Let me see. And if I'm not attached to an outcome and if I don't have expectations of them, then I'm not so invested in what's happening in the experience that I can just have the experience while observing the experience. You know what I mean? So then I can discern in a way that makes sense, in a effective manner. But if I'm all tied up with needing them to be a certain way, needing things to turn out a certain way, then I might be too invested in either criticizing or putting rose-colored glasses on in order to see it a certain way. And then it would be much more difficult for me to discern effectively. All right, so any more feelings about having expectations of spiritual people to grow and learn at the pace that I want them to so that we can play together? Yeah, now I just kind of giggle about it, like I just kind of feel, oh, that was very selfish of me, yes. Yes, it was. Yeah. And how much more free does it feel to be now a witness to those things without my own grudge in the way, without my own expectation in the way? Now, when I just like flashed and thought of the group of people that I was thinking of, the spiritual community, I just looked at them and then I just felt this warmth on my heart, like, oh, they're precious, just like every other human at whatever stage you find them in. Even though they may be holding a grudge to a certain segment of the population that I could find forgiveness for, that doesn't mean anything, I doubt that they're going to be like, well, you have to hold a grudge too, or you can't be our friend. It just means that we're not going to be able to have a high-minded conversation on that topic at this time, maybe. But maybe we could, We'll see if the opportunity arises. Okay. Just feeling over my cards to see if I want to pull any. Oh, this has gone on quite some time now. I guess this is going to be this. I guess it'll be an alchemy reading. What did we talk about? Love is the answer. Alchemy reading. Remember, it's just information to reflect on. Take what's useful for you. Leave the rest. Let me know if you have any thoughts or comments, or if you want to come talk about some things. Opposing views are welcome too. I like to consider other perspectives, and especially things that I hadn't considered yet. Have you found another way to heal besides love? Let me know.